This 2017 contract was to sell a US firm a dozen of South Africa's old fighter jets. However, Draken International claims in court papers filed in Florida that our local arms manufacturer Denel has not fulfilled its side of the deal, shipping apparently only 3 jets, 2 of which allegedly carry serious safety defects.
Not only are they saying you didn't deliver 9 of the 12 that we ordered, but you delivered 2 of them without ejector seats.
Okay. That's kind of concerning.
Yes. So Draken said that it was clear in the terms of the contract that all jets had to be delivered with, I think they call it in military terms, egress systems, but it's an ejector seat. And they had to now go to a third party to actually, install injector seats on 2 of them. I'm not sure about the third one.
News 24's Jan Cronje tells us why we should care about Denel's finances next. Later in the show, a Gqeberha woman is safely home following her kidnapping. And finally, Dr John Kani now has the power to hand out Oscars.
Got something to say about this topic? Drop us a short voice note on the Leeds WhatsApp hotline. That's 072-562-3179.
Thanks so much for tuning into The Lead. Listened to now more than 500,000 times. Please rate us 5 stars and hit like and subscribe on Apple, Spotify and YouTube to know exactly when our next episode drops. My name's Graeme Raubenheimer, this is The Lead, and this is The South African Story. State arms manufacturer Denel, known for developing world-renowned defense weaponry, including the Casspir armoured vehicle as well as the Rooivalk attack helicopter, has been battling to stay financially afloat in recent years. That's despite government bailouts. And now a jet deal that it struck with a US firm has seemingly soured as well. Bringing us this exclusive story today is our business journalist Jan Cronje. He's live with us now in our Cape Town studios. How's it, Jan? Welcome back to The Lead.
Thanks, Graeme.
I really appreciate you having you on here. The story kind of came out of nowhere. Tell us how you came across this very, very interesting story.
Right. Well, Graeme, I was actually looking for another story. As you may know, MTN is involved in a court case in the US over its alleged ties to Iran and Afghanistan. I was looking through court papers trying to find the latest filings in that case when Denel popped up. And I thought, this is interesting. When I looked at the company that was suing it, Draken, I remembered writing something back a couple of years ago about this sale of old South African fighter jets. Luckily, the papers were available. They're not always available. And there we go.
How difficult is it to get such court papers in the US? I think before our chat you were saying it's actually quite easy for any journalist to take a little bit, of a closer look. Yeah, you were looking at something else, right, and you struck gold.
Right. Much easier generally, Graeme, than in South Africa. We're in an odd situation where it's easier to get court documents for certain cases in the US because you have to sometimes pay a small fee. At other times they're free, but there are publicly accessible websites where you go and you have a look, you can enter search terms, you can get the whole court record, everything, right? Here, you can do that to an extent in Gauteng. They have something called Court Online. It's not really working as well as it should. At other times, you have to do something I'm sure you've done also, go to the basement of the Western Cape High Court and actually fill out a form and talk to someone and try and lift the document. So, yeah, easier in the US generally.
Or, run around like a little puppy dog after the prosecutors, hoping that they're going to give you copies, and then you've got to try and make photocopies in the court.
Correct. And
We've all been
waiting
there.
on you, and you're doing the photocopies, and it runs out of paper, and someone in the queue behind you is saying, will you hurry up? Yeah.
These are the trials and tribulations of any journalist in South Africa. But anyway, before we get to what is actually in these specific court papers, let's first bring everybody up to speed where Denel is these days. For the casual listener who's not necessarily filing defense, proceedings or anything that's happening within the defense world in South Africa, we know that the Army and the Navy aren't doing really great these days, possibly at the worst that it's ever been. Not many planes in the sky, not many boats out at sea. and we've covered that extensively on the lead in the past. Denel, it's not doing lacquer financially. It's had government bailouts in the past, but as I understand it, as per our past reporting on News 24, even that, in terms of the bailouts, hasn't really helped all that much. They've had to pay off, past debts. They've had to pay off SARS. How's it looking for Denel?
Yeah, Graeme, over the past 10 years, things haven't been good. There was a recent report to Parliament where the Denel leadership said things were going fine until around about 2015. So over the past 10 years, I think they've made losses every single year besides last year when things were a bit better. As it made losses, to cut costs, they reduced staff. So 10 years ago, there were still around about 5,000 employees at Denel, many of them highly skilled. Today, they're under 2,000. And it's got this negative feedback loop, where as the number of employees decrease, skilled people leave for the private sector, the order book falls, right? So again, a decade ago, it was selling in the region of 8.5 to 9 billion rand. That was its revenue per year. That's now fallen to just over R1 billion. So things aren't looking good. And the state, because Denel is a state-owned defense company, right, has had to bail it out. The most recent bailout was 3.4 billion. It was given about 2 years ago.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. It's taxpayer funds, of course. Most of that has been used up, but Denel has been able to pay off a lot of its legacy debt, not all of it. And it's now in, like many other state-owned enterprises, says it's in a turnaround phase. It says it's got quite a nice order book going forward for the next couple of years. But some of those orders are not locked in yet. So it's still a tricky, precarious situation, right?
And that order book, as you alluded to into your reporting today, is also not as great as what it was a decade ago, right? Because that order book would have been, spanning into multi-billions.
Correct.
What does it look like now?
Correct. So revenue for this year, I think, is in the region of 1.5 billion. Next year and the following year, they're projecting losses again. Revenue is projected to increase, but not by a lot, right? So it'll take Denel a long time to get back to where it was a decade ago. Never mind, 15, 20 years ago, when I believe that things were even stronger.
Right. Let's go to the latest developments now with these US court papers, this lawsuit that you stumbled across. I love that you as a journalist did so. But first, what is Operation Dragon that Denel sort of pursued, or Project Dragon? It was before the pandemic. What was it all about?
Yes.
It was in the state, as you say, of turnaround.
Right, correct. So in 2017, Denel entered into a contract with a private US company. Now, most of Denel's contracts are with states, because it's states normally buy expensive military hardware. But this was with a private company called Draken International, headquartered in Florida, and it is quite a unique business. It's essentially a private air force. So it buys old military jets, still operational military jets, and then it uses them in adversary air kind of tactical scenarios with the US Air Force or the Marines or other NATO air forces. So it was interested in 12 of the old Atlas Cheetah fighter jets that Denel still had. Now, those were South Africa's main fighter jets from early 90s to mid 2000s, when they were superseded by the Saab Gripen fighters. And there are problems with the Saab Gripen fighters, but when those Saab Gripen fighters became operational, our old Atlas Cheetahs were, they weren't mothballed, but they were no longer operational. And Denel started to put out feelers for selling these, right? It sold some to Ecuador, and then it got this interest from Draken, who wanted to add these jets to its private air force. Now, that air force has like old Soviet jets. It's got some old French Dassault jets. So it's generally not like the latest generation of fighters because a private company can't buy them, but it buys up jets that are perhaps a generation or two old. You can often get these quite cheaply. It uses old or it uses pilots that have graduated out of the U.S. Air Force, often very skilled, and then they are used in these tactical adversary air scenarios. Where you actually train. What would it be like?
Simulated training, basically.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So that was the deal.
No, what was so how many aircraft did Draken want now from Denel?
Right. So it wanted 12. And
a nice dozen.
Yeah. And it was going to pay a total of, in the end, $35 million for everything.
Okay. Do we know, let's do a little cursory check for 35 million US dollars in rand today. Obviously, it's today's terms.
Correct.
But that's, in today's terms, just more than 600 million South African randelas.
That's right.
Quite a lot of money. What are the court papers now juicily reveal, Jan?
Right. So what the court papers say is that only 3 of those 12 jets were ever delivered to Draken. And it now wants to get some of the money that it paid Denel back, plus other damages. So Denel could be on the hook for, the amount hasn't been laid down exactly, but pretty much everything it has been paid already, plus more.
Right. How many jets has Denel given Draken? How many do they still owe?
Right. So it's given them 3. 2 were delivered in 2019, and a further 1 was delivered in 2020. Now, the end date for the contract was supposed to be November 2020. So that's when all 12 had to be delivered. And what Denel had to do on the South African side was to get them up to speed, do some testing, see that they worked, install all the components that Draken asked for according to the contract, and then ship them to the US. And that only happened with 3 of the 12.
You're listening to the latest edition of The Lead on News 24 with Graeme Raubenheimer. If you've got an opinion on what you've heard so far, drop us a short voice note on our WhatsApp hotline. That's 072 562 3179.
This is The Lead. This is the South African story with myself, host Graeme Raubenheimer, in conversation with business journalist Jan Cronje. He happened to have stumbled upon these court papers filed in the US about a deal between a US firm and Denel that has seemingly soured. Let's return to the conversation now. But 2 of them weren't up to scratch? This is what's alleged in the court papers, right?
Correct. So not only are they saying you didn't deliver 9 of the 12 that we ordered, but you delivered 2 of them without ejector seats.
That's kind of concerning.
Yes. So Draken said that it was clear in the terms of the contract that all jets had to be delivered with, I think they call it in military terms, egress systems, but it's an ejector seat. And they had to now go to a third party to actually, install injector seats on 2 of them. I'm not sure about the third one, but I think it's clear that even the planes that were delivered, and the ejector seats weren't the only problem. They also said that Denel had not brought the correct kind of technical advisory side of it, which is not exactly clear what they mean.
They didn't bring somebody with a nice manual to say, this is how you really use the planes how we understand it, right?
Possibly. So even those 3 planes that were delivered weren't up to spec. So that's also part of the lawsuit.
Wow. It's just, for me, it's very much it's like a South African story of like, they sent these planes over and 2 of them don't have ejector seats. Allegedly, Jan. Obviously, because this is the US firm's papers, right? So they, Okay, so, but Project Dragon, of course, would have brought revenue in for Denel, which it sorely needed. based on what you were saying about the numbers, obviously they need billions at this stage. And what we understand about this deal, it wasn't anywhere near $1 billion. It was close to, but not enough. But it's a lost deal, essentially,
correct.
at the end of the day. It's a blow to Denel, right?
Correct. When the deal was signed in 2017, Denel was saying that this is going to help our local aerospace industry, right? Because it's not like they just take the planes out of storage and then send them to the US. They have to get them back into a condition to fly. They have to, possibly upgrade them. It's going to be a job boost, But I think more importantly, Graeme, is that it was a sign that Denel can still deliver on time and, military hardware internationally according to the terms of a contract, which is what Denel wants to do, because the South African army at the moment isn't buying enough hardware for Denel to be able to make the kind of profit and be the kind of African leader in defense contracting, right? So it actually wants to sell to Middle Eastern companies, European, the US, right? So this is very bad for its, on the face of it. I mean, we haven't heard Denel's side of it. They said that they're going to be filing their court papers, and then we have to report on this. But on the face of it, it's not good for their image as a international player.
Right. I don't think they were counting on you, Jan, by accident stumbling upon these court papers.
Yeah.
So what did they say to you from a media perspective?
Right.
Can't give comments at this stage. We'll wait for the court case to be ventilated, right?
Correct. They said two things. The first one was that they will oppose the case. So they're going to, I guess, brief a team of lawyers in the US, and they will be filing their first legal papers there fairly soon. At some stage, they will have to reply to the merits of what Draken has said. And then they also said that they don't want to kind of ventilate this issue in the media because it is now before the courts, but that they are very aware of contractual obligations and et cetera, et cetera. So not much.
Yeah, not much. Do we know the timelines for when things need to be heard, or is it still, your guess is as good as mine?
Yeah. It's still very early because the initial papers were only filed last week, so it's going to be weeks and months before we actually get clarity on when and whether there will be a jury trial, which is what Draken is asking for.
To you and I, this is like, it's juicy. I'm actually envious as the journalist inside me that, you stumbled upon these papers. It's very exciting. It's why you and I are journalists.
Right.
It's why anyone becomes an investigative journalist
Right.
and maybe goes down that avenue. But to the average Joe, they're like,
Yeah.
why do I care about Denel?
Yeah.
Why do I care about all of this?
Yeah.
I think the only thing I would ask, why do you think we should care? But I think it's because here's another sort of agency or part of the state system as we know it today, which is hemorrhaging taxpayers' money.
Yes.
That's why I think we should care, right? Not that we need to necessarily protect the skies, because we're not really doing that optimally, are we?
Yes. So Graeme, I think that's a good point. Denel and other state-owned enterprises, when they get bailouts, it's tax funded, So those funds could have been going to other, quote unquote, more deserving parts of the budget if those SOEs had been better run, right? So I think that's a key issue here. And then also, look, not every country these days has a state-owned defense contractor. Many of them have just these big private defense companies, but that's not really what we have. So we want to have a successful defense industry, whether private or state-owned, and because ours is state-owned, we want to have a successful Denel, right? Not only can it earn us kind of foreign earnings, if create employment, but
Foreign investment,
but whether it's private or or state-run, you have to have some kind of defense industry that is functioning and that works for the, in the interests of the country.
But there's also this view, especially from the defence side of the community, guys who were perhaps in the old National Defence Force and SANDF of modern day would also argue, well, it's the proudly South African IP.
Yeah. Correct, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
There's also that sort of thing that we sometimes don't look at, right? Is that there's a lot of these guys that say, Denel used to be great, maybe obviously in certain circumstances for nefarious purposes, fighting in Angola or whatever the case may be, or however you want to look at it, it's very difficult.
Right.
And some might say, well, Denel's a shade of what it used to be.
Yes.
Of a country like South Africa that used to be very independent in creating its own, arms and inventing all these things like Rooivalk, etc., etc. Now, no, it's no longer the case. Look how bad it's gotten.
Yes.
Right?
Graeme, that's a good point, because the Atlas cheetahs, now I'm sure that there are people listening that have a far better knowledge of these than me, so I'm probably going to get something
Absolutely.
wrong.
We are not defense experts.
Yeah. So please write me an email to say I've got something wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But the Atlas cheetah was developed, as I understand it, in the 1980s because of an arms embargo around South Africa. So it was developed off the basis of the previous generation of fighters that we had, French Dassault Mirage 3s, and they were upgraded and improved, and based on their airframes, this locally developed fighter jet was successful. So I guess, an argument could be made that whatever the reasons were that it was developed, that IP is still very valuable to the government, which is why it's important for Denel to be a successful company, because then it can actually make use of that. And it's not only the Atlas Cheetah, it's the Rooivalk, it's many other locally developed,
100%. I couldn't agree more. And just to, reiterate, we are not defense experts.
Yeah.
You're a journalist who has a keen interest in perhaps the side of things, and you happen to stumble upon this, and you've done a great job at filling in the blanks, because it's not Jan's full-time gig. You cover an array of different topics, and so do we here on The Lead. And I also just wanted to add this, and we were speaking before our interview, Jan, that it's not all doom and gloom for Denel. Rheinmetall and Denel Munitions together have signed what they are calling the largest order in the history of that munitions to supply, I think it's 155 millimeter ammunition, and it's to the EU. It's millions and millions of euros. Correct. Maybe perhaps that will be the big sort of contract that helps save Denel down the line. Who knows? But it doesn't seem like it's all doom and gloom, right?
Yes, correct. I was looking at their proposed order book. Now, this is something that they say, these are things that we can maybe win if we play our cards right. And they presented this to Parliament recently. And there's some very significant orders, mostly from the Middle East, that we are bidding for, right? And we, I think many of them have to do with artillery. We have quite advanced, quite modern artillery systems. And if just a handful of these orders come off, that 1.5 billion in revenue for Denel could increase, massively, which would mean, it can again employ the more skilled staff that it's been losing, et cetera, et cetera. So that is the end goal, I guess, of this turnaround strategy, which the leadership are looking into.
Well, let's hope it gets saved. There's people's livelihoods on the line, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's one of our exclusive stories on the front page of News 24 today. US firm sues Denel for 125 million rand over 9 fighter jets by Jan Cronje from our News 24 business team, who happened to have stumbled upon these court papers in the US. I love it. Well done, Jan. It's always lacquer having you on The Lead, and I appreciate the brevity and the professionalism that you bring to the podcast. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, Graeme.
Trending topic.
To our trending topic now, and a Gqeberha woman is safely home again with her family following her kidnapping. 62-year-old Tracy Fourie was travelling home from work last week when criminals struck, before officials had later tracked her abandoned vehicle to New Brighton. The Hawks say Fourie's kidnappers released her this Monday. It's following an intervention by a local task team, including private security officials. 3 suspects, meanwhile, are now behind bars, whilst Fourie has been medically cleared to return home to her family and friends, thankfully with no reported injuries. Crime-fighting initiative eBlockwatch shared a post on Facebook confirming the news, revealing that Fourie and her relatives have a newfound respect for the police. The trio is expected in court, with many of you commenting on News 24 that the suspects should be denied bail.
Looking for a smarter weekend scroll? The Weekender is your ultimate guide to bold stories, sharp opinion, and a fresh lens on life in Mzansi. From exclusive interviews and powerful essays to wine picks, playlists, and pop culture gems, it's your perfect weekend read all in one place, landing every Saturday on News 24. And finally,
he's got a cabinet full of accolades. But it's perhaps a bit astonishing that celebrated thespian Dr John Kani does not have an Oscar to his name. At least yet. Even though he starred in some of Hollywood's biggest flicks in more recent years, still today we can celebrate the news that the Lion King and Black Panther star has now earned the right to vote to hand out Oscars to deserving actors and actresses. He's announced he's now been elected to be a member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences over in the United States, joining some 533 other artists from across the globe. 82-year-old Kani's called it a huge honor, adding that his friends have since joked with him that he's now going to have to watch a lot of movies, given the rigorous judging that's required. Sure, tough life. But I'm not doing any of this any justice, so read Joel Ontong of News 24's full exclusive with Dr Kani on the News 24 live page. Before we end off on this edition of The Lead on News 24 today, to say sincere condolences to everybody who knew and loved revered broadcaster, fellow political journalist Tshidi Madia, who has sadly passed on. May her soul rest in peace. Don't forget to send us your voice notes on 072 562 3179. Hit like, follow, subscribe on all the various platforms to stay notified of our last edition for The Lead this week. My name's Graeme Raubenheimer, and so long as there's trusted news first, we'll have The Lead.